The Early Weigh-In podcast is back this Saturday in the wee hours of the morning. The UFC is back in Shanghai, China. We've got Johnny Walker taking on Chinese rising star man Mingyang Zhang in the co-main event. Confirmed 5 rounds at featherweight. Former title challenger Brian Ortega taking on former bantamweight champ Aljamain Sterling. Pretty solid 12-fight card for us to get into, man. So won't waste any time. As far as last week goes, profitable night in the green for both of us. I was traveling for work a lot last week. Came in with a one-and-done parlay, man. The Sursakayev Eric Nolan fight doesn't start round 3. A little bit hairy with it getting to round 2. A stoppage there, and then GM3 Michael Alexejczyk doesn't go the distance. Round 1 stoppage there. Didn't sweat pretty much that one too much at all, man. So profited 1.51 units. Didn't have, again, much time to research. Wanted to keep it light, keep it simple. Try to keep myself on the green. Happy to do so. Throw it over to you to what was a 2-unit night. Nice dog shot, nice big prop. Let you go over it.
Yeah, man. It's kind of weird when you're a little salty, even coming in the green. I felt like it should have been a huge night, man. First bet of my card, Alexander Hernandez over Chase Hooper. Kind of pissed at myself because I was a little scared. Usually I take at least a unit shot on my dogs, but plus 320 I think it was just scaring me, man. I knew that there was an opportunity for Hernandez to get it done. But I was a little bit worried about those later rounds. He ends up finding the kill shot at the end of round 1 and, covered the plus 320 for sure. Diana Barbosa versus Karine Silva had her at plus 180. That was a coin flip fight. I'm not going to say that she should have won or anything, but that could have gone my way. And I guess long term, I'm happy to be holding the plus 180 ticket there. Fight ends by sub in Chimaev versus Duplessis. Again, it's plus money. I'm not too upset by it. Chimaev has him by the neck a few times. And then even at the end in the 5th round, the one glimpse of hope that Dricus Duplessis had was a guillotine that probably was never in. But that was the only shot that he could have won as well. I missed on that one. Fight doesn't go the distance in the Cannonier-Michael Page fight. I wasn't going to play it. And then last podcast, you were like, dude, I was expecting you to hit that 185 under. And I was like, you know what? You're right, dude. Plus 190. Tried to hit that. Page knocks him down 2 times.
Yeah.
That was really the only opportunity for the fight to finish was on the Page side. But that also didn't hit. And then one of my best bets of this year so far, Susakayev by submission at plus 700 for half a unit. That was his first submission on his record, but watching tape, you could just tell the hips on that guy. I certainly didn't expect Eric Nolan to have that much success in the first round, so it was a little steady at the beginning. But Susakayev avoids the fraud check, at least for this time. It's tough fighting 2 times in the UFC in 1 week anyway, so I'm kind of giving him a pass. I think they give him another opponent to build off of next fight, and I think he gets another win. Yeah. Plus 2 units. Like I said, it's hard to bitch about it, but I wish that could have been a really big night for me. We move on to the first fight of the night in the light heavyweight division, Dair Nurgazeh versus Uran Sadebaldiev. Odd fight, man. This is a fight where Dair opened as a plus 250 dog, and he's now been bet so much to where he's a plus 120 range. Mm-hmm. He came in 5 pounds over in his debut, and as a minus 450, he kind of laid an egg. He has this, when I was watching tape, they talk about it every time he fights, but he has this weird tick where he wipes his eyes after every exchange. And, I don't think that that's going to be an issue until he fights somebody who is putting together a game plan for him. I think as the caliber of opponents starts going up, they're going to start figuring that out, because that seems like a hole that could be exploited in his game. But when he did go to his wrestling, he looked a whole lot better than he did on the feet. He's a little bit lumbering on the feet, but his wrestling looked really clean. He gets caught by Ribeiro with a Kimura, but prior to that, it looked like he was kind of working him on the ground. On the other side, Uran, he made his debut up a weight class against Martin Budai. Budai's an 8-1 UFC heavyweight. I know Uran didn't have much success except for like the one shot that he was able to land on Budai in the last round. But I do think it speaks to the level of confidence he has in himself to take a short notice fight up a weight class against somebody like Budai. And the odds makers kind of gave him credit too. He was a plus 145 against Budai. And for him giving up 45, 50 pounds of size, I think that speaks volumes. I like his willingness to sit down and trade on punches, but Uran does not have very good defense, and he can get backed up against the cage, which I think Dair is going to take advantage of. We didn't get to see any of Uran's grappling in his last fight simply because of the size disadvantage, but I'm excited to see what he has to offer at 205 pounds. It could be a buy low spot, but I think that this is just an opportunity for me to sit back, see what both these guys have to offer, considering they both were a little, had some asterisks beside their last two fights.
Yeah. So, neither one of you nor I are big into tracking openers and things that aren't there. So, unfortunately, not the plus 250, but on the plus 125 side for Dair Nergaze here. I think last fight, man, just really baked in a lot into this line. I think the weight miss and things was super uncharacteristic. And then as well as who the opponent was in Brendan Ribeiro, some guy who's, not the a loss to Brendan Ribeiro is never aging well in the UFC. He's typically a guy getting finished out there. And so I think a lot of that's baked into the line. But if he shows up, if he makes weight and is a 100% fighter on Saturday, I think he's the better grappler. I think he's the much better striker of the two. Those really hard kicks, can throw nice head kicks. I also think he's got the better cardio, man. I do think Uran is probably going to showcase a better skill set, more of his true self being at light heavyweight here. But ultimately, man, I think Nergaze should be like the minus 125 fighter and not plus 125 in this case. So I've got a unit and a half on the dog to start the night, and we'll move on to the next fight where I've also got a unit and a half on the dog. Long Zhao taking on Su Young Yu. It's another one where I kind of feel like Su Young Yu is drawn dead to one path here. If he cannot get the offensive wrestling going, I don't know how he wins this fight, man. What if Long Zhao's able to go out here and put him on his back? We've never seen that happen before. And on the feet, it's Long Zhao's fight all day. He's the bigger guy, the longer guy. I think he's got the better cardio of the two. You look at a guy who's younger with way more experience, a system play you and I have kind of talked about before. To see that at plus money, the Chinese fighter, if Long Zhao is able to keep this fight on the feet and extend it at all, man, I really think he's live to really kind of run away with it. I'm not really confident he could finish, but I do think he's got such a significant advantage on the feet that late in this fight, not counting out a TKO. So I'm on the Long Zhao side, plus 110 for another unit and a half. Be nice just to catch one of these dogs right out the gates and kind of be a positive night for myself. But yeah, I feel like Su Young Yu, if he doesn't land takedowns, there's no way he wins the fight. So it's 1,000% dog or pass to me, and Long Zhao's a pretty easy pull for me.
Yeah, so after hearing that, I feel like I got to double down on my tape study for this fight because originally coming into this, it's one of those situations where I feel like I've seen Long Zhao kind of struggle with the grappling of his opponents, and I feel like that's obviously the game plan that Su Young Yu is coming into this for. It's always really frustrating with me when I know that there's a wrestling disadvantage and I have to scream at the TV for him to get up off of his back and work to his feet. But when this fight is striking or in the striking range, I do expect Long Zhao to start pulling away and adding points on those scorecards. But I'm afraid that jiu-jitsu is going to be able to kind of lay on top of them and kill those minutes. I think it's a close fight, so I tend to agree with you that it's dog or pass in this situation. I think control time to you and then the moments to Zhao. So it's a dog or pass for me. I totally understand where you're coming from making that bet. Moving up a weight class to the featherweight division, Yi Za taking on Weston Wilson. I don't know, man. Probably gonna lose a unit on Weston Wilson this week, man. I'm aware that he's kind of trash as an all-around MMA fighter, but the dude is slick on the ground, man. He does have some, decent wrestling to get the fight to the mat. And I've seen Yiza taken down in just about every fight that he's been in, and I feel like there's a really good chance that he gets caught here. I don't want to get super greedy as Weston is a plus 790, but it just seems like an insane price because we've talked about this before. I don't think that there's an MMA fighter on the roster that can cover and really justify like a minus 1,200 favorite price tag, Yiza, Young hasn't really proven enough to me, and I think I'll probably take a flyer out on Weston Wilson. I've done it 2 times in the past now. I think I tried Weston Wilson over Gene Silva at an insane price tag, and then I also had him when he did submit. He submitted somebody, and I won a couple units off of it. But that was another like getting me plus what
Jekka.
Jekka Saragi. Gave me like plus 450 on his submission, and I think you're getting even better with that here, but plus 790 is good enough for me, dude. So yeah, I'm on Weston Wilson here. Prove me wrong. He's probably first rounder bust for Weston Wilson though.
Yeah, man. You mean your best win being a road to UFC fighter doesn't warrant a minus 1,200 price tag? I'm with you, man. I've got Yiza in the fantasy league ultimately because at the end of the day, I do think he's a better top time wrestler. And on inside the pocket, I think he's got the much better hands and the power to finish a fight. But even at range, Weston's a little tricky with the karate style. And again, on the mat, he's the bigger guy, the longer fighter with really tricky jiu-jitsu. And so, you touched on the principle of just like no one should really ever be this big of a favorite in the UFC. And you just kind of plug your nose, throw a dart, and just bet every single plus 700 you can, and you probably profit in the long run. So, I was even looking at like plus 3,000 for his round one sub. It's like the last 6 or 7 of his wins. So I don't know. I think there's ways that you could get tricky, throw a little pocket change on Weston Wilson to be cute this week. I don't think he wins, but he's where all the value is this week. 1,000%, man.
Side note, Shoeface just won $1 million, dude.
Yeah.
Ain't that crazy? In 2025, he just won $1 million.
I was just peeking down at it. I don't know if it was a come from behind, but it looked like it was it was a late round 3 rear naked choke where it kind of looked like he was getting beat up in the fight. So it was pretty sick. I was watching it kind of peeking down when you were breaking one of those fights down. Michelle Pereira, Kyle Dawkins making his UFC return at 185. I think there's a real world where Michelle Pereira plus 115 inside the distance looks like an absolute gift. I think he's way more physical, way more hardware, and way more durable as well, man. I think he could come out here and just nuke Kyle Dawkins. I really do. But there's also a world where Michelle Pereira is just not the same anymore. I bet a boost against him last time where everybody was on Michelle Pereira, and I was like, man, after that Fluffy Hernandez fight, when you get the brakes beat off you like that over 5 rounds, like, you really realize that you're never going to reach the pinnacle of the sport. And how serious are you, when you go back to your training and things next fight? And it clearly kind of showed in the boost fight, man. It didn't look like he was all the way there mentally. And so I'm not eager to back him at a huge price tag in this one. Kyle Dawkins, pretty good cardio, pretty good jiu-jitsu, but I don't think he's very durable, man. And I think round 1 is going to be extremely tough. And if he were to get through it, maybe he offers a decent live spot, but I have no interest back in the dog pre-fight. Gun to my head, I think Michelle Pereira round 1 knockout is probably how it's going down.
Yeah, so as one of the many people who did back Michelle Pereira in his last fight, I'm out, dude. I'm out. Minus 290 right here in this spot. I don't care if he was fighting Jekka Saragi in his next fight, dude. I'm literally out on this. He is the much more athletic guy. That round 1 is super. If he's not concerned about reserving his cardio, he is super dangerous in round 1, and I think he could find a finish. So if I could find like a crazy price tag on a round 1 finish, maybe I'd consider it. But plus 115 isn't even good enough for me for the inside the distance, because I think if Dawkins survives the early onslaught, it's probably a pretty decent fight. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So pass for me unless I can find a crazy price tag on the round 1 finish. Pereira's the pick. Not laying minus 290 for him, though. Moving down to the lightweight division, Rong Zhu taking on Austin Hubbard. Rong Zhu, about the oldest 25-year-old I've ever seen in my life. He looks terrible for his age, and I think it's probably because he's had well over 30 fights in his career.
Or he probably is 30.
Yeah. There's for sure the UFC has not seen a birth certificate, so that's very possible. I think that this is much closer to pick'em odds, man. Hubbard is the type of guy who makes all of his fights close because of his toughness and his willingness to move forward. And, when I look at Rong Zhu, he isn't exceptional anywhere to make me think that he should be a heavy favorite. And so I'm just having a difficult time seeing where he covers this price tag. I think the wrestling is in favor of Hubbard. I think the UFC caliber experience is in favor of Hubbard. And then I kind of think it's a nullified striking battle. The only place where I can confidently say Rong Zhu has a clear advantage is just sheer athleticism. I think both guys are tough, and I expect to see a close decision. Now, the fact that it's in China, certainly not something that I'm looking forward to, losing another coin flip fight. But I think if I continue to make these, I'm going to come out profitable in the long run. So give me Hubbard plus 240, man. I think that this is a spot where I've at least got to trust my read here. Markel Medeiros is a really tough fight, and Hubbard had a really good fight against him. Markel Medeiros has good wrestling, good striking, and I think they're both better than Rong Zhu. So if Hubbard gets that same fight, I think he does enough to get the nod here.
Yeah, I told you when we were, talking about this fight prior to the podcast, if you think you got screwed on Miles Johns and Deone Barboza, like be prepared, man, because you're right. It probably really is a close fight. Hubbard's notorious for making fights close. He just typically doesn't do enough. Guys typically can land takedowns on him and control him a bit more than he can control them. Guys are typically a little bit faster, more athletic, like you said, and he doesn't pack much power. So a lot of times the bigger shots are landed on the other side as well. And in China, if this was in the Apex, dude, I would probably bet Austin Hubbard. I probably would. But I think at best he looks pick'em, and despite that, still holding a lot of value. I just feel like you're gonna get screwed, man. And ultimately, I do think the bigger, faster shots are gonna come from Rong Zhu. So I think the judges are gonna give him one pretty confidently in his hometown. So I'm on the Rong Zhu side. Loner Kavanaugh taking on Charles Johnson. This is one of the best fights on the card in my eyes, man. Charles Johnson, I think, I really think Charles Johnson at times can compete with some of the best flyweights on the roster. I ultimately really believe that. I think he's got good pace, good pressure. You can take him down, but he's hard to hold down. Incredible gas tank, good boxing. You would think, especially looking at my betting history, that I'd be all over Charles Johnson here. And it's taken a lot of discipline for me, honestly, not to bet him here. But I just feel like in a 3-round fight where I can pretty much guarantee he's probably not going to win round 1. And I think Loner Kavanaugh's going to be the one that's offensively trying to wrestle, offensively landing the bigger shots. I think Loner Kavanaugh is a really, really legit prospect, and I've stood in front of him a couple times now, and I've learned, man. I think he's legit, and I kind of feel like Charles Johnson's just the next stepping stone. It could be one of those like Austin Hubbard where Charles Johnson makes it close and gets screwed in China, but I think Loner Kavanaugh is going to walk away with his hand raised. So taking a lot for me to stay off Charles Johnson. I got Loner Kavanaugh by a pretty close decision. I had to pick.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add to it. Big size discrepancy, so I think it's going to be hard for Loner to land any takedowns, but I do think he's going to be landing more punishing shots on the feet. Charles Johnson's going to make him work. This is a 5-round fight. It's different. It's the same breakdown for Charles Johnson in every one of his fights, dude. He's going to drop that round 1, and then I think that the bigger moments are going to go to Loner Kavanaugh. So pass for me in a fight that I think is probably close, and I don't want to lay a minus 215 on Loner Kavanaugh here. Right. Moving on to the prelim main event, we have Maheshate taking on Gage Young. Maheshate hadn't really had much success in the UFC as of late. I think he's a pretty decent striker. He landed that one kill shot on in his debut against come on, help me out. Steve Garcia.
You cashed it. Round 1 plus 800.
Yeah. I honestly, I think that's going to remain his best win. That being said, if he beats Gage Young here on Saturday, that's not going to be better than his Steve Garcia win. So, I think he's a decent striker, and he has a willingness to trade inside the pocket. But he does lack a little bit of defense, and he stands straight up. He doesn't keep his hands up whenever he's coming out of the pot. Whenever he's like clinched up and he's releasing, he doesn't keep his hands up. He's been dropped a couple of times that way. But he's definitely game himself, and only 25 years old, racking up UFC experience. For what it's worth, I think Gage Young in his last fight against Evan Elder, he showed a decent game. Evan Elder's a big dude. He's fought up at 170 in the UFC before. Now Gage was a little outskilled everywhere, but I thought he did a decent job of controlling the pace. And then, especially in the early moments of the fight, I thought he showed me a few things that made me feel like he has some potential in future matchups whenever he has a full camp to prepare for the fight. So this is kind of like the opener of this card, where I don't think I got to see the full product of Gage Young whenever he made his debut. And so I think that this is a fight where I'm going to sit back and just see what he has to offer here with a full camp. So maybe give me Gage Young here, dude, but not enough to lay juice. So just a slight lean.
Smaller shot, 1 unit on Mahashate here at plus 102, plus 104. I thought the line was going to flip. I was seeing Mahashate at minus 105 and minus 102 on some books, but kind of seen that line move a lot. I ultimately think, man, I don't think Gage Young is going to be able to land any takedowns here. And on the feet, I really just favor Mahashate. I think he's the longer, better accurate striker, got the UFC experience. I think he hits a lot harder. He's not the best defensively sound, but neither is Gage Young, man. And so I don't think they're flying a 25-year-old 0-1, really no-name prospect out to China, to upset Mahashate. So, I feel like in these type of cards, a lot of times take narrative out of it, but a lot of times in these regional cards like this, these guys are set up, and I think at worst it's a coin flip. So I could see Mahashate looking minus 150 in the striking department here. So plus money, I was happy to take a small little shot on him. I do have some action. Moving on to the next card at 170, Tayalak Nuraji taking on Kiefer Crosby. I'll keep it short and sweet, man. I think there's going to be a time where Nuraji is easily fadeable and probably gets a price tag he doesn't deserve. But in this one, I think he's going to get Kiefer Crosby out of there in round 1. I think he can knock him out on the feet. I think he can make it look even easier and take him down and submit him. Crosby's one of these guys who is, maybe he would have been good in the UFC in like 2002, when everybody was just barroom brawlers. But, that's not today. And I think this guy in front of him is much bigger, much younger, a lot faster, and packs a lot more firepower. And if Kiefer Crosby gets in the pocket with him, I think he's getting slept. I think somebody's going down in under 7.5 minutes, sitting at minus 190. I do have that parlayed with something else we'll talk about here on the main card, but I like violence. I think under 7.5 minutes, Kiefer Crosby's getting finished, honestly.
Yeah, so I also lean Nuraji here. Unfortunately, doing the tape study, all I could find is him in, hybrid rings where he's fighting. I don't really like that. I want to see him in an octagon. I want to see him on the UFC circuit before I start laying that type of price tag. So while I agree that he has the skill set to come out here and absolutely dominate Kiefer Crosby, it's just another one where I think I'm going to have to wait after this performance before I'm willing to lay any type of juice on him. I definitely would prefer the under angle as you have taken if I was going to bet on this fight, though. So Nuraji is the pick for me. I like the under. Moving down weight classes, but up the card, Sumu Darji taking on Kevin Borjas. I thought Sumu Darji looked pretty decent in his last fight against Mitch Raposo. And then even in the Charles Johnson fight, he held his own. I thought that was a pretty decent performance from him, and somebody who, notoriously had some trouble defending the takedown. He's looked like he's, patching up those holes. He's still in his 20s right now, and I think that he's kind of putting everything together. On the Kevin Borjas side, he was able to get the win over lazy boy Ronaldo Rodriguez in his last fight. I think Ronaldo Rodriguez is not really UFC caliber. Yeah, he's not very good, dude. And you know, I I think that he's kind of getting a lot of credit for that win. And I think that this fight's relatively close. So this is a dogger pass for me. Borjas, super tough. I don't really know how to pick this fight. I think I'd pick Sumudarji if this was a coin flip. I'm not going to pick him at a minus 180. So Sumudarji's the pick, but I'm not sure how I could play this. Give me Sumudarji.
We've had a ton of line movement, come fight time here this year, but I don't think it's going to be in the favor of Kevin Borjas this week. I think there's a point where I would play Mudarji if Mudarji was minus 150 or something. I think I could probably get to that minus 145 or something. Because if Kevin Borjas is not going to land any takedowns, you got a big cage, Mudarji's length, his style, Kevin Borjas has got to crash the pocket if he wants to land anything. And I think Sue's got a really sniping style, good front kick, good teep game. And again, if there's not much grappling threat, I think Sue's a better striker. And so Borjas, again, is going to have to close the distance. He's going to have to win off of landing the bigger shots. And if, again, you leave this one close in China, I feel like it's going to go to Sue. So I'm on the Sue side. There's a number I could play him at. I don't think it's going to get there. I'm not keen on the chalk myself. Moving up to heavyweight, Sergey Pavlovich taking on Waldo Cortez Acosta. So Sergey Pavlovich is the second leg to the parlay of the under 1.5 there. Look, Waldo Cortez is really no grappling threat and is going to have to get in the pocket because he's at a reach disadvantage. And I think he's going to get hurt for the real first time in his career, get slept. I think Pavlovich is going to put himself right back into the title talks of the division. I think Pavlovich can match the boxing, has twice the power. We've seen him go the distance now. It's not like his gas tank, is just thrown away like we used to think it was when he was early in his career. So, yeah, I don't know, man. I played the money line just because we just saw him go to the distance and win a fight. So I don't want to get greedy, lay the TKO and him just land some big shots and do enough to win a decision here. So I went the money line, but I'm pretty confident Sergey Pavlovich via decision or KO going to get the job done against Waldo Cortez Acosta.
So yeah, I mean, I also agree. I'm leaning Pavlovich here, but it's just annoying that we haven't seen the Pavlovich of old in a few years now. The Tom Aspinall fight, it kind of made him. It ruined the aura that he had around him. He was untouchable before the Aspinall fight. Then he gets put down. Then Volkov kind of looks like he's just toying with his food against him. And then in the Jorinzo Rosenstruik fight, it was like he was hesitant to really commit to the shots like we've seen in the past. So I'm hoping that he comes out here and looks like the Pavlovich of old, comes out here and just dog walks Cortez Acosta. What I am worried about, though, is Costa, pretty decent takedown defense, very good chin, hasn't been knocked out in 5 years or more, and that was only on the boxing scene. But I've seen him eat a couple of really good shots. I think that this fight's a little bit closer than it's lined, but I still am going to lean Pavlovich here. And unfortunately, I can't even take him just inside the distance because I don't know which Pavlovich is going to show up. Yeah. So pass for me, lean Pavlovich, though. Moving on to the co-main, where we have a 5-round co-main event, not for any type of title or anything. We have Brian Ortega taking on Aljamain Sterling. Aljo had released a video earlier this week talking about it was news to him that this was a 5-rounder. He's not really sure who asked for it, but the line is getting steamed towards Sterling here. I think that Sterling is going to have the advantage in physicality, and then for him to have the top pressure and the ability to get the back of somebody and just secure a round, I think that that'll play out well if this goes to decision. But it does seem like a fight where he needs to be perfect over 25 minutes to get the win here. And Brian Ortega's, known for seizing the opportunity when it presents itself. And if they're going to be rolling around on the ground for 25 minutes, then Ortega's going to have that look one time or another. Now, whether or not he gets it, I'm not sure, but this is a dogger pass spot for me, just considering how steamed this line has gotten on the Sterling side.
Right, yeah, above minus 300, man. It does probably become an Ortega or pass, and I do think Aljamain Sterling on the feet is a better striker, is going to rack up double the volume with the kicks and everything, and ultimately is a way better top control wrestler. And not just wrestler, man. Aljamain Sterling is like a legit grappler, great black belt, excellent at getting the back. So I think there's points where he can ride out time. But yeah, I was extremely shocked to see the line move so much in the favor of Aljo after it really being confirmed a 5-rounder this week, to the public. Because I think Brian Ortega is just really an opportunistic fighter. There's not a lot of process to his game. Even dating back to his title run, like Moicano is whooping his ass for 3 rounds before he gets that one. Clay Guida's up on him before he finds that knee. And so Brian Ortega's always been one of these guys who, capitalizes on moments, and that gives him 10 more minutes to do so. And a gassed Aljamain Sterling sticks his neck out, always in weird places, leaving the hands down. I don't know, man. I'm never really want to lay a lot of chalk on Aljamain Sterling. But the fight against Movzar really impressed me, Dan. It really did. And at 145, maybe the weight cut's not horrible. So maybe the championship rounds aren't a big deal to him. But I'm on the Aljamain Sterling side just because I think there's a lot more process to the game. And I do think he's at this stage the one with 2 feet still in the door and the more skilled fighter. So on Sterling, no interest laying minus 300 whatsoever. And I'll keep it short and sweet in the main event, man. I try not to overthink this one. Sure, competition-wise, everything for Johnny Walker is in his favor. The size, everything, and maybe even a grappling advantage. I don't know, man. I just feel like he's not going to grapple, and Ming Yang Zhang is going to go out here and knock him out in the first round and, become the next Chinese superstar. I was actually looking at – let me pull it up before I tell you the odds real quick because – there's so much chalk on like the under 1.5. Can I fancy a plus 180 for an under 0.5? I think Johnny Walker could get chinned in 2.5 minutes. And so I think Ming Yang Zhang early is how it goes down. Done talking about that one, man. And I know we'll get him in the future, but I think he walks through Johnny Walker on Saturday.
Yeah, this is kind of mean from the UFC, man. Like to put Johnny Walker in this spot, given his last few fights, it's kind of wild that they do this to him. But yeah, they're obviously trying to propel the Chinese prospect in Ming Yang Zhang, who was kind of counted out in his debut as like a plus 400, and then gets a knockout win, and they're like, all right, well, this is the guy we're going to promote. So they're giving him good matchups here, man. Johnny Walker is a guy who, had a wild style coming into the UFC that really worked in his favor. And since you've seen his chin just get completely demolished, he now doesn't fight to his strengths and just kind of leaves himself open. And I think that Ming Yang Zhang is going to take advantage of it. That being said, I think I don't even know how you play it. I don't know what fight ends by TKO is, but I think that there's a good chance that we see, at least for the first 2 minutes before he gets chin checked, Johnny Walker throw enough to, possibly crazy catch him. Yeah, so minus 500. I don't know. If I was going to bet this fight, then I'd probably bet Johnny Walker by TKO at plus 500 before I laid minus 250 on Ming Yang Zhang TKO. So yeah, I think that it'll at least be a slugfest until Johnny Walker gets tagged. So give me Ming Yang Zhang, but odds-wise, give me Walker by TKO round 1, something like that.
Dig it, man. I appreciate you guys all hanging out with us. That's all 12 fights going down early Saturday morning prelims. I think 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, main card at like 5. That's probably what I'll wake up and start watching, catch up on them. But yeah, appreciate you guys hanging out with us as always. Make sure to like and subscribe. We'll see y'all next week.
Peace.